Welcome to Touched and Empowered, a show created to empower individuals to value their lives by hosting think tank discussions that will inspire positive action. Touched and Empowered with Katie and Ace starts now.
Welcome to this episode of Touched and Empowered. I'm Katie, again here with Ace, and today we have somebody that you will all get a huge kick out of meeting. This is Mr. Frank King. And don't give me that goofy face because I know you're fabulous. Frank King is a mental wellness comedian,
Right.
suicide prevention speaker. You said 13-time TEDx speaker. The list of people you have worked with is too long for me to even mention in your bio.
Thank you.
But the joy that you bring to helping people remember that we don't have to be too serious is absolutely fabulous. And I'm very grateful that you were here on our show today.
Well, thank you very much. Nice to be here. Of course, your audience should know that it's not by choice. It was part of a plea bargain. So,
Yeah, I'm doing time too. I do the tech support for the show. That's my penance.
yeah, I'll take jail time. Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. We were just talking about your incredible background, your amazing achievements in regards to how many nights that there was a number of 2000 what of comedy?
Yeah. 2,629 nights in a row, nonstop, comedy club to comedy club, beer bar to beer bar, drunk idiots screaming, "Tell us some jokes we can dance to." That's a quote. Uh, My lovely wife came along for the ride. I asked her in December of '85, "Hey, I'm going on the road to be a full-time professional comedian. Do you want to come along for the ride?" Figuring she'd go, "Oh, hell no." She goes, "Yeah." So we gave up our apartment, gave up our jobs, jumped into my teeny little Dodge Colt, and we were on the road for 7 years and change. So it was an amazing time to be on the road doing
Wow.
stand-up. '84 to '94, sort of the comedy boom. Worked with everybody who's famous now, Foxworthy and Bill Engvall and Ron White, Rosie and Ellen and Seinfeld and Adam Sandler, Kevin James. Opened up for Randy Travis, the Beach Boys, The Fifth Dimension, Nancy Wilson, Lou Rawls, 2 shows at the Hotel Del Coronado on New Year's Eve. You'll never find another love like mine. Yeah, so it was an amazing time to be doing stand-up.
Yeah, that's when I was conceived. That's
I had nothing to do with that. Uh,
you might have. Well, my father loves comedy,
oh
especially
yeah,
Seinfeld. Yeah. That's, understanding how rigorous that could be. What were some of the most rewarding times? And what were some of the most trying times to overcome?
Well, I started comedy in fourth grade, age 9. I told a joke. The kids laughed. The teacher was hysterical. She excused herself to go to the teacher's lounge. Um, in addition to mental health issues running in my family, more nuts in my family than in a squirrel turd, they are all pretty much funny. And so one of the most rewarding circumstances was 40 years ago this month was my first open mic night at the Comedy Store, San Diego, La Jolla, which is still there, by the way, same spot. And halfway through my 5 minute set, I heard this inside my head: "You're home." Whoa. My second thought was, I'm going to do this for a living. My third thought was, I have no idea how. Yeah, I mean, I thought about writing a keynote called "What Could You Do If You Didn't Know No Better?" Well, I had no idea how hard it would be. Just giving up my insurance job and jumping in the car with my lovely girlfriend, now my wife of 37 years, that was a high point. I remember leaving the insurance office and the guy named Bill, and he goes, "Stand-up comedy? Oh, you'll be back." I hope Bill's not still waiting. 40 years later. Uh, yeah, my ex-wife, my high school sweetheart, wonderful woman. We just had no business being married. We had nothing in common, but you know what they say, opposites attract. She was pregnant, I wasn't. So we got separated, and she said, "Look, you need to go and do comedy. You've wanted to do that since you were in the fourth grade. You just go."
Mhm.
Then she said, "But I've seen your act, and you don't have what it takes." Oh, I don't know about you, but I'm driven by I'll show you.
Mhm.
And speaking of which, somebody in San Diego who I do not know to this day who it was, after my ex-wife moved to Seattle with her folks and started a new life, and she did. She got married, got a couple of kids. That's great. But anyway, somebody in San Diego, every time I got the front page of the entertainment section or something, some good press, they would take it and cut it out and put it in a manila envelope with no return address and mail it to her. I still have no idea who did that. So that was a high point. Uh, the high point opened for Randy Travis, two shows in Michigan at an amphitheater one weekend, two shows, 5,000 people each show. That was, I mean, Randy had a band and lyrics and music and backup
Mhm.
singers. I had a microphone. That was a rush. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Working with Seinfeld for a week. That was a big deal. I was MC at a comedy club in Raleigh when I was there working radio. And in that group of open mic comics, Dr. Ken Jung
Mhm.
was one of them. And then Retta was another. It was amazing graduating class of comics at the Charlie Goodnight's Comedy Club in 1995. So that was a high point. Low point, I'm in, let's see, Tri-Cities in Tennessee. It's Bristol, Johnson City, and what is the other one? I was in the other one, Johnson City, Bristol, Johnson City, Kingsport, Tennessee. Uh, there's a three-story building, restaurant, first floor, bar, second, comedy club, third. I'm not saying everybody in Kingsport is a Bible thumping, race baiting, homophobic redneck who thinks the Holocaust is fake and wrestling is real. Just the people who came to my show. So the act in front of me, Pat Miller, was a heavyset gentleman. I mean, he was a big boy.
Mhm.
And he's walking across the platform that they had built for us to get us up a little bit, a stage of sorts, but a platform. And and a board broke under his foot. Pow! And he turns to the audience, best ad lib before or since. Turn to the audience. Nobody panic. It's just a stage I'm going through.
Brilliant.
Great
Oh,
one-liner.
yeah,
Oh,
and they loved him. They hated me. So halfway through my set, I look down and I can't see any further than the first row because the lights are in my eyes. But I do see over the shoulder of the guy in the front row is the hand of the guy in the second row with a nickel-plated 38 pointed at me with a hammer back. So I turned sideways to make a smaller target, lowered my elbow to cover my vital organs, not my first rodeo, and just waited. And finally, after about 90 seconds, this is pure East Tennessee, 90 seconds, a woman goes, "Hey, either shoot him or put it away." So that was a bit of a low point. Although he didn't pull the trigger. So I guess that's
That's a good thing.
the first TEDx. Um, I was doing stand-up corporate comedy after I left the clubs because my act was clean. I got into the corporate comedy, the conference circuit, rubber chicken circuit. Somebody said to me, "What's the difference between a club comic and a corporate comic?" Roughly $5,000 a night plus travel. And some of my comic friends, purists, they were infuriated. You sold out. You went corporate.
Right.
Yes, yes, I'm a whore, but I'm a high price whore. Um, so I rode that horse until 2008 when the market collapsed, the world financial collapse, and speaking, comedy, and everything dropped off 80% practically overnight, and we lost everything in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So a low point was when I found myself in the barn with a gun in my mouth and a hammer back. I can tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like because I had $1 million life insurance policy, and one of the symptoms of suicidality is burdensomeness. You feel like you're a burden. The world would be better off without you. And I knew my wife would be better off financially without me. So she'd be brokenhearted, but she wouldn't be broke anymore. But I knew, having sold insurance straight out of college, that every policy, life insurance, has a 2-year suicide clause. And if you pull the trigger before 2 years, she gets nothing. After 2 years, $1 million. So I called my agent. I said, "How long have we had the policy?" And he goes, 22 months and don't do it. Because he'd had this conversation before and delivered checks. So I had to wait 2 months to kill myself. I thought I could do that. That's easy. So fortunately, by the end of 2 months, I don't even recall, the day or whatever. I wasn't marking days off the calendar. and life must have gotten a little better.
Mhm.
Bankruptcy went through, phone call stopped. So that's the only reason I'm sitting here is because my life insurance wasn't fully enforced at 24 months. So, and then when speaking came back, Meeting Planners Speakers Bureau said, Frank, we love you. We can't pay you $5,000 anymore just to be funny. Got to teach the audience something. What? I'd always wanted to do that, make a difference, make a living at a difference. I had no idea how. A friend of mine, Judy Carter, Carter. If you are a speaker, listen up. She's written a couple of books. One is called The New Comedy Bible. If you want to add funny to your keynote, your workshop, or whatever it happens to be, because by the way, those sell better with meeting planners, then get her New Comedy Bible and the New Comedy Bible workbook. She also wrote a book, the one that changed my career, called The Message of You. Turn your life into a money-making speaking career. I was lamenting I didn't know what I should talk about. She gave me a copy, said, Frank, read it, you'll figure it out. So I went into it thinking I got nothing. Halfway through, I thought, son of a bitch, I do have something. Given my
Yep.
2 mental illnesses, near suicide, more nuts in my family than in a squirrel turd, I thought I can keynote on suicide prevention. My second thought was, you've been doing comedy for 2.5 decades. Who's going to take you seriously? So my wife goes, do a TEDx. And I famously said, what's a TEDx? Yeah. Got an application that week from one up in Canada. Filled it out, sent it in, got the audition, got the gig, and did my first TEDx on suicide prevention. And actually came out as depressed and suicidal on stage at the TEDx. Nobody in my family, my friends knew how bad it was until the moment I came out on stage and said, look, I've got major depressive disorder and chronic suicidal ideation. So that was, and then after I got done, 2 other events called and said, do you have any more mental health topics? Oh, yeah. So that was number 2, number 3. Number 4, I didn't have to audition for. They like the title and subtitle so much, which was Suicide, the Secret of My Success, counterintuitive. Dead Man Talking, play on Dead Man Walking, the book and the movie.
Mhm.
My 5th one I didn't have to audition for, my personal favorite, Mental Health and the Orgasm. Treat your depression single-handedly.
That's a great title.
I love my iPhone, but it's my second favorite handheld device. They called me up and said, no, you don't have to audition, Chief. Just come over here and do that. So so that's pretty much my career. And I've been speaking on suicide prevention ever since. I was on the phone with 2 different outfits today, one in Tennessee, Emergency Managers Association, Tennessee, and a big construction IT firm in Pacific, Missouri. Didn't know there was a Pacific, Missouri, but um, they're in the construction business. They run the fiber optic wires and they work on the towers and anything to do with communications.
Mhm.
They That's their end of the construction business, and they're going to have me come in. They're concerned because in construction, by the way, #1 at-risk occupation in the U.S. for suicide. 1,000 people die roughly every year by accident. 6,000 die by suicide. You're 6,000. I'm sorry. You're 6 times more likely to jump off the building than fall off. So construction is, and they're aware they got a big problem. So that's what I did. I picked suicide prevention as a topic. That's my lane, as they say in the speaking business. I have other keynotes, but I decided in 2018, look, I'm just going to be a suicide prevention speaker. That's going to be my lane. I'm going to be a thought leader expert. And then I picked 10 top at-risk industries in the U.S. for suicide. That's all I market to is those 10 industries. So I coach speaking. I tell them, look, you need to pick a lane. You got to be an expert or thought leader. Yep, not a journalist, not half dozen keynotes. Meeting planners want to see this. Frank King is an expert in, and then rather than spraying and praying your marketing, just figure out who has the problem, willing to pay you to help solve it, and go after those guys. So that's my business model for my coaching students.
That's very clear and concise. And actually, what I find interesting about most speakers is that they go in, they see one of their speaking gurus on YouTube. They find them, they try to learn from them, and then they don't know exactly what it is about themselves. And I think the fact that you had that specific book, that
Yeah,
tool to help you narrow down that search, really get to the gritty of it and be able to deliver that and then market to the 10 markets, I think not everyone has that clarity to do so. I did not have
Yeah.
that. And that's
Yeah, yeah, it's just and I only there's industries. I don't go after corporations directly. I speak and pitch association conferences because they have to have a conference every year by their bylaws. People pay to come, they got money to pay you, and I'm getting paid for the keynote, but everybody in the audience has the same problem. So I'm really showcasing what I do for all the corporations in the audience. My goal is I did the Washington Labor and Industry a year ago, February, and BP, British Petroleum, was there. And they hired me to come to their refinery up in Northwest Washington State. And then I did it on November 6th. On November 7th, I got a call from one of the contractors. There are lots of contractors on site at the refinery. One of the contracting companies said, "We want you to come back up here and do that just for our employees." So that's 3 engagements from the one. So the idea is rather than, you've got a captive audience with the same problem that you're talking about, and they get a chance to see you do it live. And that's a great way to, that's what I preach to my students is, look, pitch associations, figure out who has the problem and what associations they belong to and pitch their conferences. So,
brilliant.
Because it's really who they know. It's not who you know, it's who they know.
mhm.
So,
Rather than again going after corporations, go after the one conference with a room full of, a target-rich audience.
yes. Yeah. Because essentially, when you find the target rich audience, this problem that you're facing that you know how to solve through your own message, you're hitting all the people who are also going through the same problem, and thereby they can solve it for themselves with that wisdom.
Yep.
Mm.
There's some great software now. If you're a speaker, listen up. Talkadot, Talkadot, talkadot.com. You create a QR code and a coupon code. And with 10 minutes to go in your speech, you go, "Hey, could you guys do me a favor? I got a little 2-minute survey. I'd like to know what you thought of my presentation." Just point your camera, phone, at the QR code, little bar appears at the bottom, yellow, click it, and then survey. Take about 2 minutes. And if you put the coupon code in where they ask it, then you can get a copy of whatever, a PDF version of my slide deck or something. And it collects testimonials, audience comments, and it also has a little CRM and the first question is, do you have an event Frank King would be good for? Do you have an event? Do you know somebody who has an event? So you're collecting all that information and their contact information, detailed on what event they have. And, so anyway, I did a breakout, 27 people, 18 of them filled out the form. I took the survey, 18, 2/3 of them. And I got all their contact information, phone numbers, companies, comments, testimonials. So if you're a speaker, trust me. And Talk About has a free forever version. So just give it a try.
Love that. One question that comes to me is, what are the 10 industries that are facing this problem that you solve? You mentioned one, but I'd love to hear the other 9.
Yes, construction, mining, excavation, fishing, farming, forestry, dentists, veterinarians, physicians, attorneys.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And the veterinarians, dentists, physicians, attorneys have a very similar issue in that nowadays 4 out of 5 of them come out of professional school with $300,000 to $500,000 in student loan debt before they open a practice. So financial stress leads to mental and physical stress leads to high blood pressure, stroke, heart attack, depression, thoughts of suicide. So each one has other risk factors, but that's the common element in those 4 professions. Attorneys is very adversarial. If you want to be a partner and you get X number of billable hours, and it's like the Hunger Games. A friend of mine went to work for a big DC law firm, and there are 125 associates, 25 partners. And she realized, hold on a second. There's 125 of us and 25 partners. What are the odds? How much am I going to have to work, to get to the point where they would have me, become a partner? So she decided to do something else. So yes, but it's very it's like the Hunger Games, very competitive.
Yeah, I was in one of those situations. It was great. It was a grad program out of college, and I don't want to say exactly which one it is, but essentially there were 60 assignments and there were only 30. I'm sorry, there were 60 of us and there were 30 assignments. And yes, you're all competing against each other for the 30 assignments. And yes, it was like the Hunger Games, except
Yeah.
you still had to maintain composure while you were doing it. And at the same time, pick either to sabotage or pick to just do your best and guard whatever you got. And it was really fascinating because in those stressful situations, I mean, I think about it now and I look back and I'm like, thank goodness I went through that. But on the flip side of it, I'm also like, I had two friends go to rehab because of that environment.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned that because the high pressure situations and that funnel that you just mentioned of all the different ways that you could possibly get down to the part where you're feeling despair and no way out.
Yep.
How do you pair your comedy and your speaking ability to help solve that? How do you take your specific message on stage and you're able to just relieve that stress?
The comedy comes in handy, and this somebody asked me, being a comedian, do they not book you to speak on suicide prevention? I said, no, you got it backwards. They want the lived experience, which I have. They want the learning objectives, takeaways, and the fact that I can leaven that with organic, well-placed, tasteful, not jokes, but funny personal anecdotes. It makes it a lot easier to digest.
Mhm.
There's a psychological principle that if you have to tell somebody something serious, if you follow that with a little comic relief, their brain is much better prepared for the next piece of serious business. So I try to sprinkle in, I actually try to make them laugh, make them cry, take them back and forth, pole to pole, move them emotionally. And so when I talk about putting a gun in my mouth, I say, well, spoiler alert, I did not pull the trigger. And that gets a nervous laugh. And then I follow that with a friend of mine saw me keynote last year. He'd never heard me say the words, I didn't pull the trigger. He came up afterwards, and this is a quote: "Hey, man, how come you didn't pull the trigger?" I said, "Hey, man, could you try to sound slightly less disappointed?" So that lets the audience know this is going to be a little different. In my first TEDx talk, my first piece of funny business was, I did some research. Went to TED.com to see how other people handle the topic of suicide, figuring there'd be 2, 3 dozen talks. There were three, just three. And I said to the audience, well, duh, if you're really good at suicide, you're probably not going to be recording a TEDx talk. So that let them know it was not going to be your average suicide prevention TEDx. So it's a now to pull that off, two things: having been a comic all this time, 40 years, that helps. Also in comedy, there's a rule. You can make fun of any group to which you belong. So I've come close to suicide, I have two mental illnesses and so forth. So I can make fun of that because if I was neurotypical, I couldn't get away with any of that. But because, you know, I'm a card carrying crazy person, then I can get away with that. And again, being a comedian, being able to time that properly and break the tension at the right moment, but also make them cry. I mean, I've got some stories where you can, as I'm telling them, I'm choking up, you can tell I'm on the verge of tears. And then, you know, that's where you want to get them. And then again, comic relief at that point. I have a very serious story about why I don't kill myself, and it involves my mom and how resilient she was. And I mean, if you're a woman in the audience and you've had children, you're going to be crying at that point.
Yep.
And so I said, now let me leave you on a light note. Sometimes, as a person who lives with mental illness, when somebody asks, how you doing? I want to tell them, especially if I am really tired and the editor in my head's gone to sleep. So I'd done 2 3 hour CE, continuing education programs, back to back, and I was exhausted. And I got in the Uber with a nice young man, and he looks in the rearview mirror, eyes lock, and he goes, "Hey man, how you doing?" I thought, I'm gonna tell him, "I'm depressed and suicidal, dude. How about you?" He freezes. He goes, "What am I supposed to say to that?" I go, "Do you really want to know?" He goes, "Yeah. You're supposed to ask me if I have a plan. That's the protocol." He thinks about that for a second. He goes, "Do you have a plan?" And then it hit him. And he turns in his seat and he goes, "Oh, dear God, does it involve Uber?" I said, "I'm not depressed anymore." So I bring them all the way to tears and then leave them laughing. And so and it's the contrast that's where the power is, the contrast between,
Mhm.
the tears and the laughter and the tears and the laughter. So I try to teach that. I try to get my students to do that. But it takes time to,
It's a muscle.
yeah, I've had students say to me, "Look, I would tell this story, Frank, but I'll weep." I said, "Well, here's what I do. I tell it to myself out loud over and over. Because first time I tell it to myself, I weep. And then slowly but surely, by retelling it and retelling it to myself, I get to the point where I know I'm just on the verge of tears. There's a little crack in my voice. The audience knows how close I am, rather than bursting into tears. And so I said, you want to take them right there where they know you're about to, and then they'll be crying at that point.
I've learned that the scientific reason behind laughter is that it's a form of panic, but you're relieving it through breath.
Mm. Yes, and it's cathartic. It releases endorphins. And I've got, like I said, I got funny stuff, funny stories. Meeting planner, Portland, for the National Alliance of Mental Illness called me. "You're doing the keynote." I go, "Yeah, I'm happy to do it." And she knows I put a gun in my mouth. And she goes, I go, "What do you want me to talk about, Michelle?" She says, "I don't know, just give me a couple of bullet points." So I let that hang in the air. And all of a sudden she's going, "Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no." "Relax, Michelle. It was just too good to let go by." Yeah, people say the damnedest thing. I was in Vegas where it was an event a friend of mine ran. I spoke on getting it TEDx, and one of the guys I'd known from someplace else, he goes, "You want to get lunch?" I go, "Yeah." "So where do you want to go?" He goes, "Pick your poison." Uh, ma, relax.
Katie, do
Well, I mean,
bad.
I can relate only to a point, to be honest. But for somebody who's doesn't have a friend or family member who's ever been to that point, we don't know how to talk about it
Yes.
because we assume that everything we say is going to be a trigger.
Yeah, that's right. Push them over the edge.
And my sister has gotten me a lot of times where I'll say something and she's like, "Is that really what you meant to say to me right now when I told you I'm having a bad day?" And I'm like, "No, let's reframe this. Let's try this again." But she does the same thing. She finds the joy in everyday living and finds ways to share that. And I love that you help people find ways to express these things that have touched them and empower them to be open about it, because silence is not golden when it comes to anything mental health related.
No, it's deadly. And most of my clients say to me when I get there, "We just brought you in here to start the conversation." Because if I go on stage and I'm vulnerable, and Brene Brown said that, being vulnerable on stage is a superpower. What I'm doing is I'm giving people in the audience who have a mental challenge permission to give voice to their feelings and experiences without worrying about recrimination.
Mhm.
I say at the end of my speech, "Look, we're going to do some general Q&A. But if you've got a question you want to ask or story you want to tell and you don't want to tell everybody, like, 'Hey, Frank, I'm crazy. Can you help me?' Then I'll hang out another 30, 45 minutes and take them individually. And there's always a line, sometimes two people, sometimes 10. And it's about them or a family member or a friend. Most of the stories start like this: "I've never told anybody this." I get that a lot because, they feel uncomfortable.
Because the stigma around it, absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, I was in Cincinnati on site at a construction site, did my speech. There's half dozen men, which is unusual, lined up. And the last one was a nice young African American gentleman, I'm guessing mid-20s. And he's crying so hard he can't speak. So I wait. And he gathered himself and said, "What's up?" He said, "Well, I haven't slept in 2 nights. I work on the 5th floor. I think about jumping off every day." Why is that? "Well, I've lost 3 people in the last year to violence including my daughter who died in my arms. I just like somebody to pull the pin on that grenade and drop it in your lap.
Yeah.
So the HR guy was standing just to the left of us, and I waved him over. And I said, look, you need to go find the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program binder, find the nearest mental health facility to where we're standing right now, and get this young man there now for evaluation because he's circling the drain. So a couple of months later, I had occasion to talk to the HR gentleman, and I'm terrified to ask. Finally, I worked up my nerve. I said, whatever happened to that nice African-American fellow? He goes, Frank, he was evaluated, he was medicated, he's back on the job.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. Brought me to tears. So that's the ROI for me. It's very therapeutic to tell my story and have that kind of, my goal is to save a life a day is what I'd like. And I figured that day that he was my guy that day. So
And I really think with the opening up and the sharing is inviting people that there is that safe space to do so because of all the stigma and everything else around it and the fear of being judged or being condemned
mhm.
For even having a passing thought on it. So I am just grateful for all that you do
Well,
because it helps out so many people. And even if someone isn't struggling, adding the humor to it makes it easier for them to talk about it when they talk to somebody who might be struggling. They'll be like, hey, let's watch this thing from Frank King because he's
Yeah.
right there where you are and he's got pointers.
Yeah, and sometimes I will give them a link to my first TEDx talk. A friend of mine here in town, his wife lives with depression. The medication's working okay, but I said, listen, let me send you a link to my first TEDx talk, and I want you guys to watch it together. So they sat down and they watched it, and his wife turns to him when it's done, and she goes, I didn't realize people spoke about that out loud, much less on YouTube.
Yep.
Yeah. And so and what I teach the audience, my job is not to say people can kill themselves, suicide. My job is to empower the audience to do that. So I teach them the signs and symptoms, depression and thoughts of suicide, what to say and do, what not to say, what not to do, and how to find resources. So my job is to empower them.
Mhm.
And Lifesaver makes individually wrapped wintergreen giant size lifesavers.
Yep.
So I buy them on Amazon and I have a bowl of those at the event. And I have somebody pass out, gives everybody one of those. And so at the end, I go, you're probably wondering about the candy. Some of you probably realize it's wintergreen. You probably already enjoyed it. But anyway, uh, it's it's a lifesaver. And now, so are you.
Which is a great way to empower people.
Yeah, my job's to empower them to be the hero in the piece. And because once you've learned what to look and listen for, because oftentimes people say he never gave a hint, we had no idea. Well, chances are 9 out of 10 give hints. 9 out of 10 people who are suicidal give hints in the last week leading up to an attempt. So chances are you just missed the hints. And 8 out of 10 are ambivalent. They haven't made up their mind yet. So I tell the audience, look, that means you can make a difference. You can save a life. And you can do it by doing something as simple as what we're doing right here. And that is having a conversation if you know how. And before I leave here, you will know how.
Which is wonderful. And again, that's was the mission for the Teen Suicide Prevention Society. We've actually turned all of our resources over to open source. So people don't even have to give us a name or an email address. They can go straight to the website and download all of the tools for free and use them and share them. So then that way it really is teaching people how to have a conversation or how to hold space or listen to a song or a TEDx talk about, I'm thinking of you. I'm worried about you. I don't know how else to start the conversation. Can you listen to this with me? Can you watch this with me?
Yes, the company that I'm working for in Missouri, they said they've got 3 locations, one in California, one in Missouri, one someplace else. So we're gonna do a live stream of I'll be live in Missouri, but it'll be a live stream for everybody else. And they said, would it be okay if we archived your presentation, within our internal system, for a year? I said, You can use it in perpetuity. I don't want anybody ever to come looking for it and it's been locked up somehow.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, please just put it on, put it in whatever library you have for everybody and let them use it at will.
So that is amazing that you're doing that as well, because I think everyone who's been touched by all of these topics and all flavors of mental wellness or mental illness, I prefer wellness instead, because we always find ways to make ourselves better. But they are very important topics, and a lot of people still kind of shun, even now, a lot of people still
Oh, yeah.
kind of shun off and hide from them. So everyone who has spoken out, thank you.
Oh,
Because
yeah. It's still, there's a stigma around mental illness, and there's a stigma around, and a whole separate stigma around thoughts of suicide.
Mhm.
And I'd like to eventually make it as easy to talk about as the weather or sports. So, because people, if they have suicidality as I do, I find oftentimes they won't tell anybody, including their therapist, because in some states, if you tell your therapist, they're going to have you taken in front of a judge to see if you should be locked down for 72 hours.
Yep.
If we could discuss it openly without having to worry about, I mean, in some cases, it's warranted if they're really a danger to themselves or others. But if it's just a discussion, you know, I and I was walking the dogs the other day. I'm 68. I was walking the dogs and I thought about suicide, not the act, but the topic. And my second thought was, wait a minute, I'm 68. What's the rush? How much longer do I have? I mean, if I was 38, okay, we can talk about it. But 68, why rush into it? Why not? Again, it was a strange thought, but it just bubbled up.
See, and
And
that's very, so that's akin to, all right, my generation. Now we're going to get a hint of my age group. So I am a millennial, and there is a very high suicide rate within my generation. The reason why I became a mental health awareness and suicide prevention advocate was because I overcame early age suicidal thoughts. And I also did attempt early age before I was 10.
Mm.
So what you're saying really does speak to me, especially understanding that giving the framework around how people don't talk about it, how people really do address it. And I remember sharing with Katie when we first met, I was like, this is my mission. I want to help people. We really want to lower the amount of suicide rates a year, just because also it's growing since the pandemic, since the interesting factors of social media. All of these compounded factors have either increased or decreased the rates. And there are so many people out there that won't talk about it. They're scared to talk about it. I've heard people panic and call me. My friend feels this way. My friend feels that way. What do I do? And it is really one of those moments where if we didn't have people like you out there really addressing the subject head on, oh goodness, we wouldn't have such a push in mental health as we are now. Do you feel like we're making strides or achieving any progress in this area?
When I did my first TEDx talk, one of the slides I had was in the United States last year, 8 million people seriously considered suicide, 1.4 million attempted, and 39,000 died by suicide. 2022 was 49,000.
mm,
Part pandemic, part the recession, part social media. I'm speaking in Nova Scotia to a group of 7th to 12th graders who normally I wouldn't want to get in front of. I'd rather be in front of a firing squad. But a lot of it's going to be on digital media addiction and the impact of social media on mental health and smartphones and so forth. There's a course I just signed up for with it's like a 4-hour, 8-hour course on that topic because I want to be well versed in what they're living with and what and have here's the problem, now here's what I believe we can do to help solve that. So yeah, it's under 10. That's yeah, I have a friend who no longer unfortunately is alive, but he attempted at 4, 8, and 12 and made it to 69. Suffered mightily all the entire time, was medicated, but still, but yeah, before 10 is pretty dramatic.
Yeah, it was interesting because kind of similar to what you said, I actually went to a therapist and my mother and I were sitting there and she laughed at the joke, laughed at the joke. It wasn't a joke. She laughed at the survey of essentially of ADHD. I was getting an ADHD assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the survey, they actually do ask, do you have suicidal thoughts? And I didn't even know what that meant until my mother gave me the definition and then laughed at it, thinking that there's no way. And
Yeah.
yeah. Then so they have you take the assessment again,
Yeah.
but with a doctor present. Of course, my mother was present, and they caught me stutter on that question.
Ah,
That was the hint.
yes.
And then ever since then, my mother took a lot of great care towards my mental health. There were times that she tried to ignore it, but then couldn't because as a mother, you care about your child.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it was it was something that I had to keep hidden from the rest of my family, my three sisters and my father, all the while my mother did know.
Mhm. And I tell people, when you're comfortable, share your mental issues with anybody you know, love, and trust, but only when you're comfortable sharing. Parents, I tell, when I meet somebody who's got a child who's depressed and suicidal, I go, well, would you like my advice? Oh, yeah. Well, when you're speaking to the child or teenager, what you don't say is, you've got so much to live for. Because trust me, as somebody who lives with suicidality, that's not going to put a dent in it. It's not about what they
Yeah.
I
what
so
you,
agree.
what you need to do is join the conversation in their head. You say, look, I bet it's crossed your mind that your mom and I would be better off without you, that you are some sort of burden. Well, in no uncertain terms, would we ever be better off without you? And you are in no way a burden. And I gave that advice to a group in Vegas. I was speaking at Stage Time University. I was doing a little TEDx thing. Told my story, and then I added that for some reason. And I was on a panel with a guy who organized that Stage Time event last month. And he said, "Listen, Frank, before you leave, I want to tell the group there was a guy, a father at that event, who said, next time I talk to you, tell you that he believes what he learned from you saved his son by having that conversation that in that way." So, okay. Well, thank you. That'd be my one for that day, I guess. Um, but yeah,
It really is having the conversation without making anybody feel like they're in the wrong
yes,
and meeting them on their level. And it's not just suicidal ideation, it's not just mental illness. It's pretty much on any topic because you never know what's going on between the other person's ears and behind their eyes. You
yes,
don't know what's going on. So I think that's just a good skill for everyone, to be honest.
yes. As one of my teachers in high school said, everybody has secret sorrows. You're just not aware of their secret sorrows. So that's my job is to make it comfortable, hopefully to talk. And I put my phone number up on the screen in my PowerPoint every time I speak. I go, look, if you're suicidal, call 988. If you're having a bad day, call a crazy person. Here's my cell. And people call, people text, you know. Occasionally a man who didn't want to say anything at Q&A, didn't want to ask anything afterwards, be seen talking to me. I was in New York. I did 7 keynotes in 2 days, mostly all men on site at a construction site in Manhattan. They're still putting the building together. We're on 25th floor. And I put my number up there. And the next morning I woke up and there was a text, a New York number I didn't recognize. And it simply said, can I get that number for help again? So that's how I open the next keynote. I go, they say big boys don't cry. Well, I got to tell you, when I read that note, I cried because he reached out.
Yep.
And the meeting planner paid me a great compliment. He said to me when we got done, he goes, Frank, I'm watching them watching you. Not one of them was looking at their phone the entire time. That apparently is a metric nowadays. If you can get their faces out of their,
Oh, yeah.
then you got their attention. So
unfortunately, we are coming up on time. No, we
That
don't
was-
want to go.
Yeah, that was right when I was about to cry as my dog continues to bark. But I was like,
Oh,
there it is.
I have two dogs. I recorded my TEDx Launchpad, video how to. And I think I'm on the last episode, and I'm almost to the end of the episode, and the dog saw a squirrel outside.
Oh.
It starts barking, and so I go, Milo, I'm working. It was my marketing guy's advice: drop the green screen, just have your chair, bring them into your living room, make it comfortable. Don't worry about the cats wandering by, so it's not your average, virtual background,
Yep.
stage. Yeah, and the cats wander back and forth.
I thought your cat actually disappeared into your jacket at one point. I was like, that was a Houdini moment. Where'd it go?
That's an app, actually. The cat's not really there. So.
Oh.
Well, thank you again, Frank, for being here and chatting with us today. We'll make sure that all your information's in the show notes so people can reach out to have you come speak to their groups, because it really is important just to share the message.
Well, what I didn't put in there was my website, which is mentalhealthcomedian.com.
Which I do have that saved in my notes
Okay.
because I remember you speaking on the suicide prevention show.
Would you like me to close this out as a comedian would?
Yes, please.
Absolutely.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe and tell your friends. If you did not enjoy this podcast, well, we hope you have no friends.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
I'm going to send that to my son. That's hysterical. Because I don't think he follows my podcast. So I'm going to send it to my son because I can.
It's a good way, a funny way, close out on a high note. That's.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We hope that the discussion today will inspire you to take positive action in your life. Until next week, be empowered.